All right, so I'm back with part 2, and in this instance, I'm going to quickly show you an example of a planning and designing lab. Having gone through how you get your grades, let us just look at now how it would look when you actually write this down. So in this case, it will fall under some title, some topic that you've done in your science subject in biology. In this case, this may fall under nutrition or enzymes. And the problem statement or the observation in this case is that green bananas that are cut and left exposed soon turn brown. And here we have that a student suggested that the browning is controlled by an enzyme, and the enzyme can't work in certain temperatures. And now you're being asked to design the experiment to find out whether an enzyme is really involved in the browning process. So you are given your problem statement or your observation from your teacher. Then everything else is all up to you. You are then now being asked to create a hypothesis. Of course, it must have words that you can then test, assigned to some kind of unit, or some measurement can be done of this, or else it's not a good hypothesis. In this case, the hypothesis says browning will not take place in boiled or frozen green bananas because extreme heat denatures enzymes. Your aim is then to find out or to test if it's always to do something. So to find out, to test if boiling or freezing will prevent browning from taking place in green bananas. Okay, my document isn't so perfect, but focusing on the green bananas here. Of course, remember I would have said the next thing is to then ensure that you have apparatus and materials and enough, of course, to show that these are the things you will definitely need to carry out the experiment. Then, of course, your procedure, not written in the past tense because it's a plan. You're given instructions. If somebody takes up your plan, then they follow your steps, and you will see the procedure there in a stepwise manner. Feel free to pause and read it for yourself. Then, of course, like I would have explained, when it comes to your expected results, we don't know. We really don't know. We assume things, but we really don't know what results we'll really get. So have a table. That's the best way to do an expected result. Have a table that's empty, but it shows exactly how it is you will collect these observations and results. In this case, because our method outlined that we'll be checking them every 3 hours, we have a table here that shows that at 3 hours, 6 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, we're checking each sample of these green bananas. We're looking for, okay, is there browning? Yes or no? And if there is, what is the intensity of this browning like, okay? And so it's an empty table, but it definitely tells you, if you take up this plan and you decide to carry this out, it then is a perfect guide to say, okay, this is what I'm looking for when it comes to collecting the results. All right, we talked about variables. In this case, we are manipulating temperature. We are controlling the banana. We're using the banana from the same. So if we have one green banana, we're using that one, and we have controlled the time. What's responding is the browning. Are we seeing it, and how much of it? So those are the variables. Again, like I said, if you have any one of the following below, you get a mark, a precaution, a source of error, a limitation, or an assumption. And that's pretty much how your planning and designing looks. Feel free to pause and read for yourself. The next thing I want to just highlight quickly is after you've designed a lab, so it's a planning and designing lab, there's always this next thing that follows. It's called an implementation. So you've planned a lab. If it is that you want to carry it out, that plan is now referred to as your proposal. When you carry it out, it's called implementation. You have now decided to take up that plan. And by the way, you'd have many plans across the sciences. And you've chosen one plan in a designing lab. It's now your proposal because you said, this is the one I want to try. I want to carry this out in real life and see how well this will work based on this plan. So now you're implementing. When you're implementing, you follow the plan. You write up a lab report just as you would any other experiment you carry out. It's just that you are following a plan of your own that you would have created. So in this case, just like a report, your method is now in the past tense. Same method, but you are now changing it to the past tense. Your results would then now include a complete table because you've experimented based on the plan. You now have collected observations and results. So you fill out your table and any other results that you would have collected that you want to write down. You are writing a full discussion. There you go. You're explaining all these observations based on information you've collected. Why did this happen? How come, right? How is this linked to a scientific theory? What trends are you noticing? Is there some kind of connection you're noticing based on the results you've gotten? All right. And then you have limitations, which now that you've carried out, you can now clearly see is there, and by the way, these 3 marks is not just 4 limitations, it's a source of error. Now that you've done it, what did you do as the experimenter, right? Or what equipment did you use that may have been a little bit faulty? What precautions did you have to take? And what limitations did you notice? So given all 3 this time, a source of error, a precaution, and a limitation. If you made a good plan, you may find that some of these same things you planned, that were limitations, precautions, can actually be the same thing again. And your reflection, a lot of students, they don't write proper reflections. It's 5 whole marks. These are how you get your 5 marks. How is it relevant in terms of this? Does this make sense in real life? So I carried this out, but does it link to real life in any way? How were you impacted as a person, as a young scientist, based on this experiment you just did? Did you have to make any adjustments, and why? I mean, you were following a plan, but did you have to do anything a little bit differently while carrying out this experiment? And of course, you want to say all this sounding very nice and science-like, right? You want to say this with as much, with as little error in terms of your grammar as possible, and use up your scientific language, use up those terms as you explain what happened throughout this experiment. And of course, your conclusion, your conclusion is always linked to your aim. So it must be very, very specific. Sometimes we find that problem with our lab reports where we know what the aim is. The aim was to just find out if this nutrient is present in this food, right? And you definitely just have to be specific. Protein was found to be present in eggs, right? Conclusions need to be really just spot on. And that is your implementation. I will scroll down and show you another one quickly, but not so much to read it. The document will, you can pause. And for those of you who are my students, this document will be shared with you. But in this case, the problem or the observation was that, a little boy saw his grandfather adding some blue liquid, and he was told that this was fertilizer. But the grandfather he didn't just add the fertilizer, but he was specific about the measurement. And so he thought to himself, could it be a case where if we change the concentration of the fertilizer, could that affect the number of leaves? Maybe he could, hypothesize that it could affect how tall the seedlings got. So now we have grounds for testing. Could we test the effect on the amount of leaves that the seedlings will produce based on the concentration of the fertilizer? Should we follow the directions and add as is, or could we dilute it a little bit more or make it more concentrated and see how that affects the amount of leaves, right? So these are just everyday ideas. You just have to make a plan, give them, the things you would need in terms of material and apparatus, outline how you would carry it out step by step. This one has so many steps. And then, of course, This would not be expected result. It would be your assumption. That's what I would say, because expected result is supposed to be something like a table that shows how you plan to capture, right? How you plan to capture the observation and results that, but you can make assumptions definitely, but your assumptions don't have to be true until, of course, you test. And of course, when a planning and designing lab becomes an implementation, it just looks a little bit fancy, but it should have all the elements. See, your method now becomes past tense, and of course your results. See, now you have a result table, and of course you would expect the result table to be what is blank in your expected result proposal. So a blank table of this, a blank version, would be your expected result. And having done the implementation, your table can have information because you've carried it out. Then, of course, your discussion, your conclusion, your limitations, and your reflection. I surely hope that these two videos were helpful, and all the best in your planning and designing labs. Thanks for watching.